He slid a single sheet of paper across my desk like it was a restaurant check. No need to overthink it, my manager said. Sign it, or it's over. I remember staring at the header, because it wasn't even a company form. No logo, no HR footer, just a bold title printed in cheap black ink, Team Rules and Expectations. Under it, a numbered list that read like a contract written by someone who'd been waiting months for the chance to control another adult. I'm not dramatic by nature. I'm the guy who keeps his head down, hits deadlines, doesn't gossip, doesn't escalate. I've worked in corporate long enough to know most hard conversations are just awkward paperwork and ego, but this felt different in a way I couldn't explain yet. I picked it up and started reading. Rule number 1. All communication must be work-related. No side conversations. Rule number 2. Breaks require approval. Bathroom breaks should be kept reasonable. Rule number 3. No discussing management decisions with coworkers. If you have concerns, speak only to me. Rule number 4. No documenting internal issues outside approved channels. Rule number 5. After-hours availability is expected. Declining calls, texts may be considered insubordination. Rule number 6. By signing, you acknowledge you understand. This is a condition of continued employment. There were more. Half of them were vague on purpose, the kind of language that could be twisted into anything later. Professional tone at all times. No negativity. Demonstrate loyalty. One line literally said, failure to comply may result in immediate termination. I looked up at him. He was smiling like this was a formality, like he was doing me a favor by letting me stay. Is this new company policy? I asked. It's my policy, he said. My team, my rules. He'd only been our manager for 3 months, transferred in from another department. The kind of guy who never used first names unless he wanted something and always said circling back like it was punctuation. Before him, our team was boring in the best way. Clear priorities, normal hours, nobody panicking. Since he arrived, everything had turned into a performance. Meetings that could have been emails, late-night messages that weren't urgent, public feedback in front of the whole team. This paper was just the first time he'd put the vibe into writing. I kept my face neutral, because I've learned that showing emotion at work is like bleeding into water. People smell it. They use it. Okay, I said slowly. Can I take a copy and review it? I want to make sure I understand what I'm agreeing to. His smile didn't disappear, but it hardened. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms like he was settling in for an argument he was eager to win. No, he said. You can read it now and sign it now. That's not really how agreements work, I said, still calm. I'm not refusing. I just want time. He tapped the paper with one finger. It's not an agreement. It's expectations. If you can't meet them, you're not a fit. I've met every expectation so far, I said. My metrics are fine. My projects are on time. There hasn't been... He cut me off with a small laugh. Don't do that. Don't lawyer it. This is simple. Everyone else is signing. That line landed heavier than he meant it to, because I knew it was a lie. I knew my coworkers. We weren't a rebellious bunch, but we weren't stupid either. And we'd been whispering for weeks about how he was pushing boundaries, how he'd tried to block one guy's PTO because it wasn't convenient, how he'd told a woman on my team she seemed emotional when she asked him not to message her at 10 p.m. If he really had everyone else signed already, he wouldn't need to corner me alone in a conference room. I looked down at the paper again, at the part about not discussing management decisions with coworkers, at the part about approved channels, at the part about after-hours availability being expected, and then I noticed something that made my stomach drop, not because it was shocking, but because it was deliberate. At the bottom, right above the signature line, he'd added a sentence that didn't match the rest of the tone. It was more formal, more careful, like he'd copied it from somewhere. I acknowledge that I have no concerns regarding my work environment or management conduct at this time. That wasn't expectations. That was a preemptive, cover-your-ass statement. My manager watched my eyes move across the page. He saw me catch it. His smile came back, too quick. "It's standard," he said. "Just protects the team." "Protects the team from what?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "From drama, from people who like to create problems." I could have argued. I could have asked him why he needed employees, to sign a statement saying they had no concerns. I could have pointed out the irony of banning side conversations while demanding loyalty. But something in me clicked into a different mode. Not fear, not anger, just clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a test. He wanted to see if I'd submit, if I'd sign away my ability to speak, if I'd let him redefine the rules of employment in a private room with no witnesses. And the second I signed, he'd own the narrative forever. Every future complaint would become, "But you said you had no concerns." Every boundary I tried to set would become, "You agreed to after-hours availability." Every conversation would turn into, "You're not complying with expectations." So I did the only thing that kept me safe in that moment. I slowed down. I folded the paper once, neatly, and set it back on the table between us, like I was returning a menu. "I'm not signing this today," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Then we're done." "I'm not refusing," I said, careful with every word. "I'm asking for time to review it and confirm whether it's aligned with company policy." "That's normal." He leaned forward suddenly, voice lower. "You don't need time. You need to decide if you want this job." I held his gaze. My heart was beating hard, but my voice stayed even. "I do want this job," I said, "and that's why I'm not signing something I'm not allowed to keep a copy of." For a second, the room went quiet in a way that felt dangerous. Not physical danger, corporate danger. The kind where someone has already decided you're a problem, and now they're picking the fastest way to remove you. Then he stood up, opened the door, and said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, "We'll talk about your attitude later." I walked back to my desk with my hands steady and my face blank. Around me, keyboards clicked. People laughed softly at something in a chat. The normal office soundtrack kept playing like nothing had happened. But I could feel it, like a storm front moving in. The moment where your job stops being about work and starts being about survival. I sat down, opened a blank document, and began typing a timeline with timestamps, exact phrases, and every rule I remembered from that page. Because I didn't know it yet. But that piece of paper wasn't the threat. It was the trap. The retaliation didn't start with yelling or threats. It started with calendar invites. The next morning, I woke up to a 7:15 a.m. meeting titled Quick Sync Expectations. No agenda. Just me and him. When I joined, he was already there, camera on, smiling like nothing had happened. "I've been thinking," he said. "Yesterday didn't sit right with me." Same tone people use when they're about to punish you and want you to feel like it's your fault. He told me my resistance raised concerns about my commitment, that he needed people who were aligned, that he'd be keeping a closer eye on my performance for a while. Then he sent a follow-up email, CC'd to himself only, summarizing the conversation in a way that hadn't happened. Per our discussion, we addressed concerns about your engagement and openness to feedback. That was when I realized what game we were playing. I replied within 5 minutes. Polite, neutral, no emotion. "Thanks for the recap. Just to clarify for the record, I did not refuse expectations. I requested time to review a document and confirm alignment with company policy. Please let me know if you can share an official copy." He didn't respond. Instead, things started shifting. My recurring one-on-ones were canceled until further notice. My access to a shared project folder disappeared. Small at first, one drive, then another. I was still responsible for deliverables, but suddenly had to ask for files I'd had for months. When I asked about it, he replied in chat, "Let's keep questions focused and efficient." At 11:43 a.m., he messaged me asking why I hadn't responded to a Slack ping from 10:58. At 12:01, I replied that I was at lunch. At 12:03, he wrote, "Please remember availability expectations." I took a screenshot, then another. I started saving everything to a folder labeled with the date. That afternoon, he called a team meeting, not to discuss work, to remind everyone, without looking at me, that side conversations were unproductive and that all concerns should be brought directly to management, not discussed peer-to-peer. Nobody spoke. Nobody nodded. Everyone stared at their screens like they were watching a storm through glass. After the meeting, a coworker messaged me privately. "Did he really make you sign something?" I typed a response, deleted it, typed again, deleted it again. Then I remembered the rule. No side conversations. That rule wasn't about productivity. It was about isolation. By the end of the week, the paper trail had grown teeth. He sent me a formal coaching note, claiming I'd missed a deadline I could prove easily I'd met. The timestamp was right there, submitted 2 hours early. I replied with the attachment and the timestamp highlighted. Still calm, still professional. An hour later, he sent another note. This one about tone, no examples. Just a reminder that negativity impacts team morale. That one didn't even try to be factual. That night, I opened the employee handbook, then the code of conduct, then the compliance portal I'd never touched before because I'd never needed to. Our company was regulated, not in a dramatic way, no secrets, no scandals, but enough that certain things mattered. Retaliation mattered, coercion mattered. Forcing employees to waive concerns definitely mattered. I compared his rules to actual policy line by line. Half of them contradicted it outright. The other half tried to replace it. That was the moment I stopped wondering if I was overreacting. I wasn't dealing with a strict manager. I was dealing with someone trying to create a parallel rule book that only flowed one direction. But I still didn't escalate. Not yet. Instead, I tightened everything. Every meeting got a recap email. Every vague instruction got clarified in writing. Every late-night message got a response the next morning with timestamps. I didn't accuse. I didn't complain. I documented. On Friday, he tried again. He scheduled another sync. This time, HR wasn't included. Compliance wasn't included. Just the two of us. "I'm giving you one more chance to sign," he said, pushing the same paper across the table. "This shouldn't be this hard." I didn't touch it. "I reviewed company policy," I said. "Several points here conflict with it." His face changed. Not angry. Annoyed. Like I'd broken the script. "You're not in a position to interpret policy," he said. "I'm in a position to follow it," I replied. That's when he said something he probably shouldn't have. "If you involve anyone else, you're going to regret it." He smiled when he said it, like it was advice. I didn't argue. I didn't threaten. I just nodded, stood up and said, "Understood." Then I went back to my desk and opened the compliance portal. Not the anonymous hotline, the formal one, the one with tracking numbers and required responses, the one managers hate because it creates records they can't edit. I submitted a report with no commentary, just facts, dates, screenshots, the document, the exact sentence about no concerns regarding management conduct. I didn't ask for punishment. I didn't demand action. I asked one question. Is this document approved company policy? I hit submit at 4:57 p.m. At 9:12 a.m. the following Monday, I got a calendar invite from compliance. Title, Information Request. And just like that, the pressure shifted. I didn't know it yet, but the moment he told me not to involve anyone else was the moment this stopped being about me. Because now it wasn't just a bad manager, it was a risk. The compliance meeting invite didn't explain anything. No agenda, no context. Just a conference room, 2 names I didn't recognize, and a request for documentation related to recent managerial directives. That was when my manager stopped pretending nothing was happening. 10 minutes after the invite hit my calendar, he messaged me, "We need to talk, now." I didn't respond immediately. Not out of spite, out of discipline. I finished the task I was on, sent my status update, then replied that I was available in 30 minutes. I wanted everything slowed down, controlled. When I joined his call, his camera was off. I saw the compliance invite, he said. No greeting, no preamble. Care to explain? I'm meeting with them, I said. They asked for information. You went behind my back, he snapped. I followed company process, I said. The same one we're all required to follow. He laughed, sharp and humorless. You really think compliance is on your side? I think they're on the company's side, I said. That's the point. Silence. Then his tone changed, lower, measured. You're making a mistake, he said. These things don't end how you think they do. I didn't argue. I didn't reassure him. I just said, if there's nothing wrong with the document, there shouldn't be an issue. He ended the call without responding. That afternoon, things escalated fast. I lost access to another system, one tied to a project I was actively assigned to. When I asked IT, they said the request came from management. When I asked my manager, he said, we're streamlining responsibilities. At 6:42 p.m., he emailed me asking why a task hadn't been updated. At 6:47, I replied that I no longer had access. At 6:49, he wrote, figure it out. I didn't. I documented it instead. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was panicking, but because something in me finally cracked into focus. I'd spent days trying to prove I wasn't the problem, trying to stay reasonable, trying to keep things normal. But normal was gone. This wasn't about a signature anymore. It was about control, about rewriting reality in small steps until resistance looked like misconduct. So I stopped reacting and started preparing. By the time the compliance meeting happened, I had everything laid out cleanly, not emotionally, logically. The document, the timeline, the follow-up emails correcting false summaries, the access removals, the after-hours messages, the regret it comment, documented within 10 minutes of it happening. No commentary, no conclusions, just facts. The compliance officer introduced herself, calm, neutral. No promises. She didn't ask how I felt. She asked when I received the document, who authored it, whether anyone else was present, whether I was told it was mandatory, whether refusal was tied to termination. Each question was narrow, surgical. Halfway through, she paused and said, just to be clear, you were not provided a copy of this document? No, I said. I requested one. It was denied. She made a note. Then she asked something that told me I wasn't the first person in this room for this reason. Were you instructed not to discuss this with coworkers? Yes. And were you warned about consequences if you escalated? Yes. She nodded once, not sympathetically, professionally. When the meeting ended, she said, we'll need to speak with your manager. In the meantime, continue your work as usual and document any changes as usual. That phrase almost made me laugh, because nothing about this was usual anymore. Within hours, my manager sent a mass email reminding the team about proper communication channels and respecting leadership authority. It was defensive, vague, unprompted. People noticed. A coworker I hadn't spoken to in weeks messaged me, "Hey, everything okay?" I didn't answer. The next day, HR scheduled a separate meeting. Then legal appeared on a thread I wasn't included on, but could see referenced in calendar titles. My manager stopped messaging me directly. Instead, I started getting instructions filtered through HR. That's when I understood what had really happened. The moment compliance got involved, his authority narrowed. He could still manage tasks, but not narratives. And that scared him. He tried one last move. During a team call, he casually mentioned that some people were struggling with alignment and that leadership was considering next steps. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. After the call, I got an email from HR. Please disregard any informal commentary. No employment decisions are being made at this time. That was the moment the fear drained out of me completely. Because now there were witnesses. Now there were records. Now this wasn't my word against his. It was his behavior against policy. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like I'd finally stepped onto solid ground after weeks of trying to balance on something that kept shifting under my feet. That night, I realized something else too. I wasn't trying to save my job anymore. I was watching someone else lose control of theirs. Everything broke at once, quietly. On Monday morning, my manager's name disappeared from 3 standing meetings. No announcement, no explanation, just calendar updates that said host changed. By noon, his access to our project tracker was limited to read only. By mid-afternoon, instructions started coming from someone else, an interim director I'd met once in passing. Clear, neutral, boring in the best way. That's when the office energy shifted. People didn't say anything outright, but you could feel it. Conversations stopped cutting off when someone walked by. Slack messages got a little longer, a little braver, the kind of subtle change that only happens when fear loosens its grip. Compliance moved fast, but not loudly. They didn't announce an investigation. They requested clarifications. They pulled documents. They compared timestamps. They asked people the same questions in different ways on different days. And my manager started making mistakes. He sent an email attempting to clarify the rules. Document, except he accidentally admitted it wasn't reviewed by HR. Then he tried to walk it back in a follow-up, blaming a drafting oversight. Compliance saved both. He claimed the access removals were performance-based. IT logs showed the requests came immediately after compliance contacted him. He said the after-hours messages were optional check-ins. Slack history showed reminders about availability expectations, followed by criticism when responses weren't immediate. Then someone else spoke up, not dramatically, not angrily, just factually. A coworker told compliance she'd been asked to sign the same rules. Another said he was told not to discuss it for his own good. Someone else admitted they'd signed because they were afraid of losing their job. Each statement on its own might have been brushed off. Together, they formed a pattern. Legal got involved after compliance flagged one sentence in particular, the one about acknowledging no concerns regarding management conduct. That sentence turned the whole thing radioactive, because that wasn't just bad management. That was an attempt to preempt reporting. Once legal stepped in, my manager stopped attending meetings entirely. His calendar showed out of office. Every day, no return date. HR sent a company-wide reminder about appropriate use of informal documents and prohibited retaliation, framed as general guidance. Everyone knew who it was about. Then came the audit, not of me, of him. They pulled his prior performance reviews, previous complaints, transfer notes from his last department, the reason he'd been moved laterally instead of promoted. It turned out this wasn't his first time trying to rule through fear, just the first time someone didn't sign. On Thursday afternoon, I got a short email from HR. Please confirm availability for a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. regarding resolution and next steps. No drama, no suspenseful language, just process. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. They told me the document was not approved policy, that I was correct not to sign it, that the write-ups were being rescinded and removed from my record, that interim leadership would be handling team operations moving forward. They didn't ask if I wanted an apology. They didn't offer one, because this wasn't about feelings anymore. Before we wrapped, the HR rep added one more thing. For clarity, she said, your manager is no longer with the company. She didn't say fired. She didn't need to. When I logged out of the call, I sat there for a moment, staring at my desktop, waiting for the rush, the relief, the adrenaline. It didn't come. What I felt instead was something calmer, heavier, final. By the end of the day, his name was removed from org charts, his Slack account deactivated, his email bounced. No goodbye message, no explanation, just gone. People started asking questions. I didn't answer them, because the chaos wasn't for me anymore. It had already passed through me. And for the first time since that paper slid across the table, the silence felt earned. The week after he was gone felt unreal in the quietest way possible. No emergency meetings, no late-night messages, no tension hiding in calendar invites. Work just happened. The interim director scheduled one-on-ones with everyone on the team. When it was my turn, she didn't ask me to retell anything. She already had the file. She just asked what I needed to do my job without friction. Clear priorities, access restored, written expectations that matched actual policy, normal. A formal email arrived 2 days later confirming that all prior coaching notes tied to my manager had been permanently removed from my record. Not archived, not superseded, deleted. The language was careful and final. It also stated explicitly that declining to sign the document had been the correct decision. I saved that email, not because I expected to need it, but because I wanted the chapter closed properly. The team changed after that. Not dramatically, not overnight. But people spoke more freely, asked questions without apologizing, took lunch without explaining themselves. The air felt lighter, like a pressure valve had finally been released. One coworker admitted she'd signed the document because she'd just bought a house and couldn't risk anything. Another told me he'd started updating his resume the night the rules were introduced. Nobody blamed anyone else. Fear makes people practical, not brave. A month later, HR rolled out a mandatory training on managerial boundaries and prohibited retaliation. It was framed as proactive improvement. No names, no references. Everyone understood anyway. I transferred teams shortly after, not as an escape, but as a reset. Same role, same pay, different reporting line. The move was clean, approved, documented. No awkward conversations, no whispered consequences. On my last day with the old team, there was no speech, just a few quiet messages wishing me well. One of them ended with, "Thanks for not signing." That stayed with me. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. There was no satisfaction in watching someone disappear from an org chart. No thrill in knowing my documentation outlasted his authority. What I felt was something steadier, respect for myself. Because I hadn't yelled, I hadn't threatened, I hadn't tried to outplay him in public. I just refused to lie, refused to sign away reality for the comfort of silence. I learned something important through all of it. Most abuse of power doesn't look dramatic. It looks administrative. It hides in expectations and alignment and documents that aren't meant to be questioned. And most people don't lose because they're wrong. They lose because they rush, because they react, because they sign something hoping it will make the pressure stop. It never does. The pressure only moves. The last I heard, my former manager had taken time off to pursue other opportunities. That's the language companies use when the truth would be inconvenient. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't need to. The system did what it was supposed to do, once it was forced to look, and I went back to being exactly who I was before that piece of paper ever touched my desk. Someone who does his job, someone who reads what he signs, and someone who knows now without a doubt that staying calm is sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to the wrong person.